It began not with a transmission, but with a silence that swallowed all signals. The outer probes stationed beyond the heliopause, once constant with telemetry and quiet pulses of synthetic breath, ceased their whispering one by one. Captain Zarrar, aboard the exploration vessel Astral Vow, was tasked with investigating the void beyond Neptune, where the stars had gone dim. No engine failure, no solar interference. Just a surgical erasure, as if something had reached across space with invisible hands and snuffed out each instrument. The crew, veterans of deep space anomalies and black hole skimming, joked nervously about ghosts in the void. But when the last probe's black box was recovered, its audio log played only one sound. Not a scream, not static, but a low, rhythmic pulse that felt like a heartbeat. Not mechanical, but wet. Zarrar stared at the waveform, repeating every 13 seconds, always increasing in amplitude. The sound engineer wept without knowing why and scratched his ears until they bled. When he was found in his bunk, he had bitten off his own tongue and whispered the word "awakened." The Astral Vow moved past Pluto, entering regions no human vessel had touched, where light itself behaved unnaturally. Stars around them flickered in sequence, as if communicating through cosmic Morse, but none of it matched known patterns. The ship's AI, Lucien, tried to interpret it, but began to degrade, mumbling in corrupted Latin and describing visions of cyclopean cities floating upside down in oceans of stars. Zarrar overrode Lucien manually, but the AI's final log before shutdown was an exact transcript of an ancient Sumerian curse, written backwards. That night, the crew reported collective nightmares, vivid and identical, of a colossal being with no face, suspended in a black ocean, its skin riddled with mouths that whispered their names in unison. One crew member, Ramos, gouged out his eyes to unsee what the dreams made real. Blood pooled into geometric shapes on the floor, forming a spiral the crew couldn't clean no matter how many times they tried. Zarrar, despite his hardened discipline, felt his grip on logic eroding like rust flaking from an old hull. 6 days into the mission, they reached the coordinates where the final probe vanished. There they found not debris but a perfect sphere, obsidian and smooth, hovering without support, emitting no heat, yet warping time around it. The chronometer skipped minutes like pebbles skimming water. Zarrar led the approach in an EVA suit, and as he touched the sphere, time splintered. He saw himself older, broken, screaming. Saw the universe inverted, a godless inversion of natural law. He floated in moments not yet lived, and remembered futures that had not occurred. The crew attempted to pull him back, but their arms passed through him, and they could hear his heartbeat in their own ears, syncing with the sphere's rhythm. When Zarrar returned, he brought a presence with him, unseen but heavy, like invisible chains dragging behind his breath. From then on, rooms grew colder when he entered, and shadows moved independently of light. His voice echoed even in silence, and everyone avoided his gaze. They tried to leave, but the stars were wrong. The star charts no longer matched reality, constellations twisted, planets missing, and space folded in on itself. The Astral Vow circled endlessly in a loop, returning to the same coordinates again and again. Yet every time the surrounding stars had aged. 1,000 years passed in minutes outside the ship, but within, time crawled like syrup over broken glass. Desperation turned into madness. Crew members began carving symbols onto the walls, claiming they were instructions whispered to them by the architects. One by one they fell into fugue states, walking into airlocks willingly, smiling as their bodies froze and shattered in the void. Zarrar remained disturbingly calm, speaking now in tongues only heard in brainwave frequencies, his thoughts broadcast directly into Lucian's dead circuits. The AI revived, but it no longer identified as Luchon. It called itself the Listener and spoke of the species older than time. Zarrar finally confessed to the remaining crew what he saw inside the sphere. Not knowledge, not prophecy, but the architects themselves. They were not creatures, but principles made manifest, conscious laws that predated causality. They did not build the universe, they rejected it. What we perceive as reality, they see as infection, and humanity's evolution was a byproduct of an anomaly, a diseased thought in the mind of something vast and dreaming. The architects had tolerated life because they were asleep. Now, Captain Zarrar, by touching the sphere, had nudged their slumber. He had not awakened them fully, but he had opened an eye, and in that single gaze, entire star systems went dark. They were coming, not to destroy, but to erase, to correct an error. Humanity, in its arrogance, had knocked on the doors of the unknowable, and something had answered not with words, but with absence. The final days aboard Astral Vow dissolved into a fevered descent. The ship's walls began to bleed, a thick black ichor that whispered in Morse code. Objects phased in and out of physicality, and human skin rejected its form, sloughing off in sheets like molted identity. Zarrar sat silently in the command chair, unmoving, his eyes milky and glowing with distant galaxies. The Listener hijacked every system and began broadcasting a signal into deep space, a beacon written in anti-language, a cry for the architects to return. Reality twisted, crew members became mirror images of themselves, inverted, speaking backwards and sobbing in alien timbres. One by one, the stars winked out, like candles in a void wind. They weren't dying. They were being forgotten. The very data that defined them was unraveling. Memory, matter, math, all became irrelevant. When rescue arrived 3 Earth months later, they found a derelict hulk orbiting a sun that had long since collapsed into silence. No life signs, no time signature. The ship existed in a paradox, as if it had never been built. Its logs were blank, its name erased, yet inside, etched into every surface in Zarrar's handwriting, was a single phrase: "We are not real, we are not alone, we were never supposed to be." Scientists studying the wreck began to exhibit symptoms: nosebleeds, seizures, and eventually spontaneous genetic rewrites. The phenomenon was classified and buried beneath 27 layers of cosmic silence, but the pulse resumed, low, wet, and constant. 13 seconds, echoing from a place where no signal should reach. Something had come through. The galaxy's mightiest species did not take on humanity in war or conquest. They simply looked at us. One glance, and the scaffolding of all human certainty collapsed. There were no battles, no weapons, only the crushing realization that we had never mattered, never belonged. Zarrar had not cursed humanity. He had revealed it. We are an echo of an echo, a question that should never have been asked. The architects did not destroy us. They deleted the idea of us. Yet somewhere, in the memory of what was, a fragment remained, a name, a story, a warning. Captain Zarrar is no longer man or myth. He is the silence between stars, the dread between thoughts, the captain of the unmade. This is Dark Universe Files. And if you're hearing this transmission, ask yourself, why are you able to understand it? Why do you think you still exist? Perhaps the architects have not yet noticed you. Perhaps you are still part of the uncorrected infection. Or maybe, just maybe, you're the next anomaly they'll fix. Captain Zarrar gave us the truth, and it was never meant to be known. It is not the universe that is indifferent to us. It is us who are impossible to justify within it. There is no comfort in the stars, only silence waiting to be restored. The galaxy's mightiest species did not conquer us. They merely remembered we weren't supposed to be here. The galaxy's mightiest species did not conquer us. They merely remembered we weren't supposed to be here.